All right, Mel, that was fascinating stuff. We want to get back to that in a bit, but I would like to find out about your, because we're in a lovely house here. People can't see it, but it's in a lovely house, lovely area. You've evidently done very well for yourself, but you come from quite humble beginnings.
Very much so, Simon. I was born and raised in a council house. It was a new council house. Um, my great grandfather, he was very, very poor, as all the families were in those days. But my great grandfather actually served 2 weeks in prison for stealing 4 eggs. That was his only crime in 1906. His brother also done 2 weeks in prison, and that was for stealing 2 eggs. And the sad part of it is that the brother, my great grandfather's brother, these were all gamblers, by the way. He lost 6 children out of the 9 that he had, and he had to sell furniture to pay for funerals and things like this. Well, this was knocked down. Obviously, my grandfather was of the same ethos. My father was born in a house with no running water. My grandfather had to walk 200 yards to a well to get 2 buckets of water for the day for the house. But gambling was undercurrent. I've just discovered I had a program. My grandfather fought in the First World War. 10 days after the end of the war, he was out in Mesopotamia at the time. They held a race meeting, and I got that program. And I dropped it off at Newmarket Museum last week in
Wow.
in memory of my grandfather. And so card playing as well. I was taught to play cards at such a young age, and this was pre-decimalisation. From the age of say 7, 8, something like that, we would sit around and play cards, always for money. Had to be for money. And you'd have halfpennies, pennies, threepenny bits. If somebody was running out and had to put a sixpence in to take some change out of the kitty, there was this air of excitement. We had this phrase, there's a bit of snow in the kitty. There was this silver sixpence sitting there. We also got told, or not told directly, but it was just inbuilt into us, as with that fantastic poem, If, you don't say anything about your losses or your wins. You treat both those imposters the same. And that was just brought into us. I'm not one to scream and shout and holler and hoot if they get beat or if they win. You try to take it as calmly as possible. So getting back, I had no expectations of ever being a bookmaker, none whatsoever. Great parents, a brother, he likes his horse racing, and his son also likes the horse racing. And I just had a career initially working with animals, and I developed an allergy with the animals I was looking after at the time. I then went on, I delivered bread for a week, and then on a building for the council. Well, that was a doddle. You didn't do any work. I mean, typical council stuff. Once again, the carpenter in the carpenter shop, he made a load of cribbage boards. So you'd have the painters, the builders, us bricklayers in there playing cribbage most of the time. I'd met my wife, who was a nurse at the hospital where we were based, and I thought, this isn't for me. I can't see a career for me. We was married, we was rented accommodation. And I saw an advert in the Sporting Life, Jay Wardhill, who had a branch in Ware, the town where I was working. I applied. I finally got the job. I was on half the salary that I was on with the council, but I just loved it. From that first day, I can remember the first day. My first job was to do off tickets. I hadn't got a clue what off tickets were. And looking back, there were 2 race meetings of 6 races per meeting and 1 dog meeting of 8 races. There was 20 off tickets. When I retired in 2016, that number was nearer 500 with all the other events that take place. And by luck and hard work, I just managed to get out. Bought that shop, as I explained. We had some savings. I had to borrow money as well from a friend of my father, or my father's governor as it was at the time. before any monies came through, and I should be internally indebted to him, because if it wasn't for him I couldn't have bought that shop at that time. But I had a loan for about 6 weeks, that's all. And it just went from there. And honestly, Simon, I just cannot believe it. The one thing that I find interesting, which I think is more of a social, I'm not trying to say I'm totally innocent of all blame, but on the estate I came from, I got on with everybody up there. All the families, everybody. We was all one big unit. Well, as time went on, I subsequently owned 2 of the old council houses under the right to buy. I'd buy one of them, and so I bought 2, and then I had another one built on a piece of land I owned up there. And there was somebody who's now a horse trainer that dropped out of it for a couple of years, and he was basically homeless. And so I said, look, you can go in one of these houses, which he did, and he stayed there for a couple of years or so. And he's back now in the horse racing game. And he drank in the local pub, and he said to me, Mo, he said, you know, I can't work out. He said, half of the people in that pub adore you. They really think a lot of you. He said, the other half don't just detest you, they hate you. Why? Is it the jealousy? I don't know. I mean, at that time I was using a helicopter to fly about. And where they used to pick me up in my paddocks, I would fly over that estate, not intentionally, but that's just. And I used to think, as a young lad looking up, would I have ever have dreamt what I was doing? But so yes, so from very, very humble beginnings, eternally grateful to my parents, great parents, but also for the lessons of learning how to gamble and how to gamble properly.
Go on then. What would those lessons be?
Don't beat yourself up. Don't take too many risks. Try and get an edge. I could do card tricks. I was brought up a very strict Catholic, and I used to have a trainee priest come to visit our house every single week to give me one-on-one instructions. And at the end of one particular session, he'd done a card trick for me, which was a fantastic card trick, I have to say. And he said, if you do your homework, I'll show you how to do that card trick next week. And that's what he done. And it was just a manipulation of cards, still holding your nerve, don't flap, and don't be a bad loser. That is the worst thing in the world. Throwing your toys out the pram. I've never, ever done it. And I've had lots of things hit goalposts. And I've laid horses that have won by a whisker. I backed one horse once to win £25,000, and that got beat a short head. And the view on the television looked like it had won as they crossed the line. I was celebrating. Yeah. Let's talk about, what was it? Let's Talk About Money was the name of the horse. And if you look at the race again at Haydock, I still think it won, but sadly no. But you took it on board. Tomorrow's another day. And so don't hang on. To me, I can't ever understand hanging on to grief, hanging on to regrets. If you've done your brains, you've done your brains. There's only one way to go, and that's forward. And there's a sign which maybe you saw in my gymnasium. Winners never quit, quitters never win. You just have to. And so I was taught that resolve from my parents. Don't ever give up.
Now, one horse that was a big pivotal moment from what you've told me was Dancing Brave.
Yes, it's bittersweet really, the horse. But my back was against the wall. It's when I was on my own. I got my first little shop in Broxbourne. And a friend of mine, the one actually who had got been raided by the customs when his wife was pregnant, he was on his own at this stage. And I took a £1,000 bet on Dancing Brave from one of the pubs at Bedworths, and I gave him 300. It was like 3s on, if I remember.
Was it the Breeders' Cup?
For the Breeders'
Yeah.
Cup, sorry, in the October. And so we used to help each other out because we was good friends. We were very good friends. But then my accountant had introduced me to a chap, and his first bet that day was a £2 each way Yankee on the Breeders' Cup. The first one got placed at around 33s, the next one got placed at around 16s. The last two selections, I can't remember. I remember the last one was 14s. I can't remember what price the third one was. So I just hedged a pony each way double because it wasn't being covered on Channel 4. My friend phoned up, who I'd given him some of the Dancing Brave money. And he said, how are things going? He said, I've been dead. I said, oh, it's quite lively, for me. But I have taken this niggling little Yankee, and I've just got 2 placed horses. I've had a pony each way double away just to cover my arse. He said, oh, give me some, will you? He said, I've been dead and I've been here all night. I said, oh, go on then, you have it as well. I'll give you a 50. I'll have a pony each way double. And of course, they both won. The punters bet came to around 2.5 grand. And I had 7,000-8,000 or more coming back. And that set me up really well and truly because I was overdrawn in the bank, cleared me overdraft. And from that day, and I've stated it several times, I've never been overdrawn in my life ever since that day. It gave you a bravado. When you've got a float, you're a bit harder on the line. One of the biggest downfalls of most independent bookmakers was the hedging aspect. And so if you can be a bit braver in what you stand a horse for, and so it was a huge pivotal point for me.
And that's when you kicked it up a gear.
Yeah, and that was when I started laying for more, and yeah.
Now, I've seen another interview where you tell a story about a chap called Bill.
Yes, that wasn't his name, but I'll still call him Bill. But he was in a care home, and I was introduced to Bill via a friend of mine that used to bet in the silver rings and used to do the odd day in one of my shops when he was not working. And he said, oh, he's a lovely old boy. He said, you'll like him. He said, he's really well connected. I said, what do you mean well connected? He said, well, you've got 2 trainers that phone him regular. He's well into his horses. He loves a bet. So I said, oh, right. Anyway, Bill comes on one day and I'm chatting away and he told me the 2 trainers and he was very open. He said, yes. And they are, I mean, one of them is still a massive, huge Group 1 winning trainer. And the other one used to be, he retired and now he's just got his licence back out again, the other one. But he said, and they always tell me, and I've done lots of work for him. I don't know what he even done as a profession, but he knew them very closely. So he would phone up and say, oh, I'll have a £5 on this and a £5 on that. That's his kind of stakes, and think nothing of it. If Bill had a tenner on, and my staff were all trained as well to make sure that they spoke to him in the right way to get, who told you this one then, Bill? And the winners we had, phenomenal. And Bill would have a tenner on. He'd double his normal. And so consequently, it was just, and at that period, it was struggling. We were struggling hard to get on phones, not online as such then. And so staff had to go running around betting shops and things like this. It was great fun. Good old Bill. If only he knew.
And did you ever restrict any of your sharp punters?
I did in the end. It was unfortunate really because when the likes of 365 started, everybody was after guaranteed odds, which was, I remember when 365 started, we used to have a phrase in the industry of GBC, gone before Christmas. And when they advertised that they were going to get a price up every race and guarantee the price, we all said, well, it's GBC. It's impossible. Now look what they make now. How wrong can you be? And so punters would come on and say, can you do guaranteed? And if they were fairly decent punters and helpful, because we could get on ourselves possibly guaranteed, we would limit them, say, to a monkey stake or to lose 5,000. That's what we can get on for you with guaranteed odds. So there was a limiting of it in that sense.
People would be salivating now, wouldn't they?
Wouldn't they just? Unbelievable stuff now. It is, looking back. It was so easy to get on. But, yeah, good times.